What up, what up, what up? Hey, everybody, hope you're doing well. Hey, I just want to let you know, I know everybody can't always support and donate to the podcast, but hey, if you can do a one-time donation, I put up a Buy Me a Coffee link in this description of the podcast. So if you go to the description of the podcast, it'll be at the bottom, and you can just go to that link, and you can buy me a cup of coffee, or two if you want. And that would just help support the show, and I can wake up a little bit more and bring you more info. So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you can donate, that would be much appreciated. And let's get on to the show. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing excelente and taking care of yourselves on this fine weekend. Hopefully you guys got outside, enjoyed some fresh air, and just enjoy life a little bit. You know what I mean? So I came across a episode of Cosmic Disclosure where the tall whites were being described by Emery. Now, what's interesting is a lot of people, a lot of whistleblowers have described tall whites in different ways. We've got Phil Schneider, who got his hand blown off and his chest blown halfway apart by some tall, quote-unquote, whites. We've seen some recent video that states it came out from 1970 about a tall white walking in a forest and then, like, zooming off a camera. Hopefully you've seen that. It's kind of interesting. It looks kind of legit. And these things move very fluidly, and they look pretty legit when you see one on film. Could it be fake? Sure. But it looks good. Anyway, the point is that Emery talks about his very first experience with aliens in a deep underground military base, or a dump. And it is with a tall white, and it is with a 7-foot or taller tall white. Now, his experience is a little bit different than some of the other whistleblowers like Corey Good, Pete Peterson, and a few others. So I'm going to talk about his because his is pretty cool, and I like it, and I like the way he describes the tall whites, and they're not like tall grays. They're not like the short grays, just stretched out like Stretch Armstrong. No, nothing like that. What's interesting is if you've seen Star Wars and seen the Kaminoans, they're these 2-meter tall, or about 6 to 7 foot tall aliens that are in the movie that are a tall, long-necked race of humanoids native to the planet Kamino. And the way that Emery describes his tall whites is very similar to the Kaminoans, especially in their face, because he states that they have very long bodies. Long hands, long arms, long legs. They're 7 feet tall or taller, so they're going to have long everything. But that they also move in a fluid way, and that their heads are a bit smaller than ours, which is interesting considering the fact that you would believe that if they had evolved, that their heads would be larger to encompass a larger brain pan. But they don't. So, and these Kaminoans also had smaller heads in proportion to their body than we do to our very primate body. So, kind of interesting. I've always been a big fan of the Kaminoan artwork and a lot of the descriptions, especially even some of the artwork that they did on Gaia for this episode looks very similar. They have a white ashen skin, white as ash. Okay, very, very, very white. And then their heads, like we said, are smaller than ours, but they have this like crystal blue eyes, and then their eyes are not straight across like ours are, where it's like an even symmetrical. There's tilt up, he says, at a 20-degree angle, so they're kind of like that angular diagonal appearance. And it's interesting too, right? Because like, what else has that kind of look except for like an insectoid? So it just makes you wonder when it comes to the creation of the universe, like, are these creatures based on, or were somewhere down their genealogical line, came from some sort of insectoid on their planet and then eventually evolved through some genetic farmer races, or not? We know we are, and we know that we probably came from some sort of kind of primate. right? Considering the fact that I just saw this really cool picture of a silverbacked ape, but it was like an albino, or it had like vitiligo color differential in its hand, and its hand was all basically albino white. I think part of its hand was still black as well, and they took a picture of it and they put that picture next to a straight up gorilla's, and then next to a human hand, and this hand just looked like a 500-pound man's hand if the gorilla's hand was white, or peach, or whatever you want to call most of the Caucasians, color skin. So we are very similar to them. I mean, we got to face that. Did we directly come from them? That's up for debate, right? But anyway, getting back to the tall gray whites, I want to talk about what Emery talks about here. He says that they're over 7 feet tall. They have a small face, a little bit smaller than ours, and they're very slender in their arms. He says they're kind of ectomorphic. They have a very fluid movement that's kind of like a dance. So when they were in the operating rooms, he even got mesmerized by watching them do their operations, because they would just kind of like float, like doing like a Macarena, or like the like a, I don't know, like some sort of dance that was very fluid. He says their limbs are not like ours, their bones are not like ours. They're very flexible. If you ever fallen and broken your arm, you know how fragile our calcium made bones are, really. Broken my arms a couple times and stuff like that. So yeah, I know what it's like. He states that of course they're very smart. And initially, the very first time he saw them was actually getting into the safe suits to go do operations, and one of the technicians was assisting him putting on the suit, and he said that basically he could see the fluidity as this thing was getting put on. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is not human. This is definitely alien. um, but even Emery talks about. I think he talks about, the Kaminoans who were making clones of soldiers, which they did. The Kaminoans in the Star Wars movies were genetic geniuses. They would create clones and put them into the army of the Old Republic. He says they had a very oval face, which is very similar, and beautiful eyes that took up most of the face. Their eyes are about 2 times, 3 times larger than ours. Crystal blue. And the nose is basically non-existent, as in many species. They were very petite, small, beautiful lips, which is interesting. You don't hear about that. You usually hear just like a cut in the mouth, right? But the lips, he states, were very beautiful. He doesn't say they were large. He just says they were beautiful. And so moving forward, he says that a lot of people liken them to being similar in look to a lot of Russians, and people aren't really aware of like Russian women and kind of how they look, but they have like a very distinctive look, where the eyes are kind of like tilted, and it's really pretty, really really pretty. I've worked with Russian women and nurses before, and they were it's definitely a different look than here in America. So what's interesting here is moving forward that these tall whites, he says, they have some challenges with keeping their energy positive around humans. That when they're around humans, they have some energy fluctuations due to the energy that we're giving off. So he states that they have challenges even being around other species. So they have to keep their vitamins and minerals and their energy up. He says even their voltage up, keep them energized. So they have like a certain way to do that even Emery wasn't aware of. But he says with our psychic energy, they're not really able to be around us too much, or that they have to have some sort of technology to keep them around us in general. So Emery's getting interviewed, and he said, well, the whites I worked with were not like that, but the hybrid whites were oversensitized by our energy field. They were picking up on every cellular energy that we have. So he said we were in sync with the larger, the standard tall whites, but with the hybrid tall whites, there was some inability for them to be around us. Um, they had a special pulse of energy. We have a special pulse of energy that was just too much for them, and so they weren't able to really work around us. The tall whites, Emery says, didn't really have too much of a problem. So moving forward, yeah, they did some surgery on some Earth humans, and they have some special capabilities, like the reptilians, to come in after death and be able to assist in kind of like the Lazarus effect, be able to kind of bring them back from the dead. Um, so I think that's kind of interesting. He states that the females did not have any eyebrows, but they did have a different pigment above their eyes, which made it kind of look like they had eyebrows. And then he said they always had like a skin tight like spandex type of clothing on, just like we have. Um, and of course they used telepathy as their primary language. However, they would speak to you in your language. So you spoke English, they'd speak to you in English. Russian, they speak to you in Russian. He said that if they were having like if humans were having an unloving thought, that they understood. He said that many times humans don't react well in their mind to seeing aliens. So these aliens, can send a telepathic message to assure them that they understand. It may be their first time. We don't take any offense to how you think of us, and we also understand because we also have similar feelings. They were able to crack smiles. They were able to make people laugh. They were able to send symbols and images and give folks a holographic image that they would download into your brain in a matter of seconds so that they could communicate with you and so you could learn something fairly quickly. Maybe they needed to teach you something at the table that they had just completed. So, like during these autopsies, they might have wanted to confer some information. They could do that within milliseconds through images and through thought processes, and were able to give that information to them. So he also stated that they would bring these species in, whether it was an ET or a human that had passed on, and bring them into the base, and they would assist in the most difficult cases. He stated, even if the person wasn't from Earth, even if the person wasn't a tall white, they would assist. He stated that all the tall whites always had the white skin or white kind of fluffy, not fluffy but like peach fuzz hair. Um, and then they were working on an individual that had 6 holes in them. And in the middle of these circular burns were 3 dots that looked like a triangle. If you could attach the lines, it would make a perfect equilateral triangle. And they were trying to figure out what type of weapon that killed the hybrid white that they were working on and where it happened. And he said they can actually attach themselves to this dead being and download its information. And they can usually figure it out. Who is responsible, where did it happen, how did it happen, and figure out the entire story within just a few minutes. And so that's really fascinating to me because could you imagine having that capability? I mean, something's dead in front of you and you can figure out exactly what happened and where and bring back the mind. And this is the second species that's been reported to be able to do this. Keep in mind, the insectoids were also brought in for these types of thought transferences post-mortem. So that's like a superpower to me. Like having the ability to do surgery is one thing. Having the ability to create a spaceship is a scientific marvel, but still something we can do. But like to be able to touch something and to be able to understand exactly what happened to it telepathically when there's no brain activity left, mind-boggling. That's a superpower. That's a power we do not have. Telepathy, we do have telepathy with these other species. We don't have telepathy within our own species yet, or at least not in a way that we'd like to have, that we could clearly communicate with each other, clearly see what the other person's thinking, and understand that, yes, this is exactly what they're thinking, not something that I'm coming up with in my own mind. So that's really interesting. So anyway, that is the tall whites. Again, keep in mind, these are not the tall grays. These are not the Nordics that have blue hair, blonde eyes. These are a completely different species. It does not say which star system they're from. These sound like Arcturians to me. That's my theory, but I can't confirm that because it's not what is stated here. So that's really fascinating. I think that, these species are definitely here to assist us, definitely here to help out, and definitely benevolent in most ways. I haven't heard a lot of bad things about this particular type of tall white. There have been some other tall whites that they've talked about that have bashed into a security briefing room with some generals and like wiped out a bunch of people. But I believe that was a different type of tall white. See, the way they put all these folks together because they don't have to say where they're actually from, because saying where they're actually from might be classified. But if they can just group everything as a tall white, then you can group in a tall gray, a tall white Nordic. You can group in a tall white, bald-headed, crystal-eyed, Kaminoan from a Star Wars looking type of being, which is the kind that we're talking about today. So keep that in mind too as you do your research. Just remember they throw around these like general statements or general groupings that group together a few different species from a few different star systems. So it's just something to keep in mind as you do your research. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the tall white Kaminoan type alien species that Emery worked with and said was a benevolent species, and definitely seems like they have some superpowers. So I hope you're enjoying your weekend. Hope you're taking care of yourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, following through any hobbies and your goals and your dreams. Sometimes it's hard to fit those in the weekend. I know it is, and I experience it myself. Weekends fly by so fast. It's 4 o'clock where I am, and I'm sure you guys are burning through your weekend, and nobody wants to go back to work on Monday. So continue to explore, continue to use your mind, continue to do your hobbies, and enjoy them. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care, and Lockdown Universe out.